everybody. Welcome to this episode of Inside Insights, a podcast powered by Zappy. My name is Ryan, but if you're listening, you probably already knew that. And I'm also joined by my co-host, Patricia Montestioca, the Chief Growth Officer at Aldor, and our producer, Kelsey Sullivan. Ladies, they already know who you are too, but how are you doing today?
Good. How are you guys doing? I heard you're in the middle of Indian summer.
Indian summer here in Boston. It's October 5th. It's a special day for me at the time of recording. It's my youngest son, Callum's birthday today. My baby, as it were, and I don't want him to grow up, so I wish time would stop moving so quickly. But yeah, it's beautiful here.
Is it time for another baby? Is it time
no
for
more
another
babies? No. We Jillian and Ryan Barry are not having more kids. We're good, but we just got a puppy recently, so we got that going for us, and she's eating all of our shoes as puppies do.
You know what my puppy's doing? Eating the underside of all the sofa. You know how sofas got and all chairs have that black material? It's destroyed. Every single piece of furniture that has that material has been destroyed by the puppy. I mean, I'm talking about, I've got a set like
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Dog, and then I've got a 40-pound dog, and now I've got a 10-pound dog, and the 10-pound dog has destroyed more than anybody in life. I mean, it's just like, hello, you little tiny thing. Because why? Because he fits everywhere. And because his mama is more lenient to him because his mama is just being a wuss. Absolutely. I mean, this is the perfect example of a day in the life that he leaves a trail of terror everywhere.
I love it. That's really cute. If you didn't get to see a picture of Patricia's dog, it's because you're not checking us out on YouTube. So
step up. God, you guys gotta do it. Step it up. Step it up.
And truth be told, my older son told me that my YouTube at Zappy is whack because we don't have a lot of followers. And he's comparing us to Mr. Beast. And like, that's not really fair for Patricia and I, but yeah, feel free to subscribe. We'd love it. We appreciate it. I had fun with this episode, and I want to just come clean. I'm doing the outro and intro recording, but you're going to see me in this exact same black t-shirt because I'm actually recording our next episode right after this. You feel me? We're cranking out content here on the Inside Insights podcast. But today's guest, Sinead Jeffries, who's one of my colleagues, is somebody who I look up to. She recommended this book called Workstyles to me a while ago, and I read the book, and it really resonated with me. Anyways, I connected with the authors and, kindred spirit sort of thing, and asked them to join us on the podcast. So Alex Hirst and Lizzie Penny co-authored Workstyles. They have Workstyles Revolution, a website that gives you a lot of tooling and a community to be involved with. And they also consult with people on how to make their work and their life better connect with their consultancy, which is called Hoxby. And so today's discussion is really us getting into how you can set more intentions of how you want to work and how your life and your work can infuse each other and how you can project those intentions so that your colleagues and your teammates can get it better, catch you in stride. And I thought it was important, given a lot of our discussions here in the podcast are centered around how we all got to change, how we got to up level, how we got to improve the way we work. But I also think with the rise of technology, with the rise of AI, the promise is that we can do the things we love and not work as much. Yet so often we're still applying technology poorly, or we're working the same way we did in the fucking 80s, and it doesn't make any sense. So I think you'll enjoy this episode. It's a provocation of how you can better spend time. If it intrigues you, I'd highly recommend that you buy their book. It's a great book, but it's also like, those books, ladies, that you read them and they feel good in your hands. Like it's like got a nice cover, and it's one of those books. So anyways, should we get into the conversation?
Let's do it.
Hello, everybody. Today, we are going to talk about work styles and the future of work. I'm very, very excited. I have the pleasure of having two guests today, Lizzie Penny and Alex Hirst, the co-CEOs of the Hoxby consultancy, but also the authors of Workstyles, a book about the revolution for well-being, productivity, and society. And this is the part for those of you on YouTube where I shamelessly plug their wonderful book. Lizzie and Alex, hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me today. Oh, you're plugging too.
Thank you so much for having us. Yeah, we're all plugging. We're all plugging.
Oh, I love it. I'm very, very excited for today's conversation, folks. I know many of you listening work for very large businesses. And our goal today is to give you some insights of how you can better understand each other, how you can better work with your environment so that you can be more effective and more happy and more fulfilled in what you do. Katie Sweet, who's on our marketing team, told me that I swear a lot more when I get excited. This is a topic that's very near and dear to me. So this will definitely earn my explicit rating for the Inside Insight show. But just a little bit of backdrop, Alex and Lizzie, tell us a little bit about yourselves through the lens of what got you to this place where this is a project that you've got so much passion for, and what led you to sort of write the book.
I'll start if that's okay. Thank you for having us. We are the co-authors of Workstyle, as you say. But I think more than that, we are the creators of the word workstyle, which gives everybody the freedom to choose when and where they work. And we think that that is a word that the world needs now desperately, more than ever before, given that so much of the work people do can be done anywhere and any time. And we think that that is an opportunity for people to start to fit work around life rather than life having to fit around work, as has been the case now for more than 200 years.
And we came up with it in a pub, so don't judge us
as you normally do.
Because all
good ideas.
The best ideas are in the pub. And I would say that we both had kind of separate journeys that took us to that point. And Alex can talk about his, but for me, it was having my first child. And it just totally opened my eyes to the inequalities at work. And I'm kind of embarrassed to say that until then, I'd worked for big corporates. I was relatively ignorant about how unequal work was and how certain groups were essentially discriminated against because they couldn't work 9 to 5 days a week. And since we had that epiphany in the pub, and we started Hoxby in order to test the concept, that was 8.5, 9 years ago now. I also have had pregnancy complications in my second pregnancy with my twin daughters. I moved across the country to Bristol in the UK from London. Okay. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. My husband was diagnosed with cancer. All sorts of shit has gone down that has made me really appreciate Workstyle from a personal perspective. So I think for Alex and I, this is very much it's been a personal journey as well as a book and a Workstyle, a kind of working journey.
I love it. I feel like any good founder story is sparked with obviously a pint. Or in the case of my business partner, Steve, it was a glass of wine in his garden, but also with some passion for the problem, right? The problem. And in your case, it's a founder market fit problem. Like we're feeling this and therefore we need to attack this. And I'll share sort of my own personal like passion for this. So I'm a millennial and I'm not hiding from that. I would say I'm an elderly millennial, but
are you a geriatric millennial?
I think that's technically what you're supposed to say. Yeah, I'm 36. Yeah. That means I'm a geriatric millennial. So I've sort of always been like, what's up with all this bullshit at work? And we were talking about this before we were recording, like when we were all kids, you didn't challenge work and you didn't challenge some of the things at home. And we were reflecting as parents, the three of us, before we hit record on how interesting it is that our kids challenge us and hold us so accountable, which I actually quite like. But, I sort of always worked in a business where it was like, dress code rhetoric wasn't a thing and work from home wasn't a thing. And but I spent the first 7 years of this journey here at Zappy on a train for 3 hours a day, missing breakfast, missing dinner, because I felt like as a leader, I needed to be present in the office. Mm. And I didn't realize that y'all started this journey 9 years ago, which is quite refreshing because I feel like the impetus for me personally was the same impetus for a lot of people. So I'm not unique. It was the world hit a pandemic, which forced us to literally question everything. And I have to say, 3 years later, I'm a remote employee. I'm home for breakfast. I'm home for dinner. And I'm probably way more productive than I've ever been. And that's because of really leaning into what's best for me and how do I integrate my life around work. I think I had a convenient excuse, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think it's interesting that you say that and that's your context, Ryan, because we always say that, we started this all those years ago and people thought we were weird for a long time. They looked at us weirdly, like, why are you doing this? And then the pandemic came along. And suddenly everyone wanted to know how we worked. And so we tried to kind of open source that. Alex and I were the limiting factor in doing that. And so that's where the book came from, to answer your earlier question about how did we come to write a book, we don't consider ourselves to be authors. I mean, we are, and the book's been a #1 Sunday Times bestseller in the UK. So at some point, we're going to need to recognise that we're authors. And so now everyone can read our story and about our big experiment of working this way and all the many things we've learned along the way.
I love it. Okay, so just because I've read your book and we've talked socially before, define work styles for me. What does work style mean, and how does one go about creating and defining their work style? By the way, I'm willing to share mine if you guys are too later. I'll pull it up.
Yeah, sure. So work style, we define it as the freedom to choose when and where you work. And what we mean by that is complete freedom as far as possible. We're talking about having autonomy to define when and where you work for yourself. And that represents a big gift in the way that people think about work and their relationship with work, which is anchored in age-old industrial age, in fact, norms where the work we did, we had to travel to factories to operate machines in simple terms, and it gave rise to industrialization and a whole load of other stuff. But prior to that, people were working at home in cottage industries here in the UK, and actually producing under their own steam. And actually, what we're talking about is a shift back to those times in terms of individuals taking accountability and responsibility for their own output and defining when and where they work for themselves, so as to be able to deliver that output in the best possible way for them. So taking advantage of their unique talents, their circadian rhythm, even where they get their energy from, as well as balancing the things that they've got going on in life, particularly in the way that they get work done. So work fitting around life rather than life having to fit around work, and the friction that creates, the stress that creates, and the unnecessary elements to life that it has given rise to. So for me, a bit like you, commuting to work back in the day, prior to coming up with Workstyle, ultimately led to my burnout, because I was leaving the house at 6:30 and not getting back till 7:30, and having very little time to think or do much other than work. And I think having ownership for your own work style gives you choices that you can make that you didn't have before, to balance work and life in the way that's best for your well-being. And we conducted some research within Hoxby to explore what that does for your productivity. And to cut a long story short, autonomy of being able to decide when and where you work improves your well-being, and as a result, your productivity. So it is because of an increased state of well-being that you're more productive when you have autonomy. So it's better for us as people, and it's better for the work we do. But I think also it's worth saying at this point that it's better for society in a number of ways. Principally because we're removing the idea of a one-size-fits-all system of work. So we're saying that actually work shouldn't be one-sized, it should be individualized. And if you can break down the stereotype of a one-size system and move to an individualized system of work, you can include more people in it.
Yeah, it resonates with me. I'll tell you what I'm thinking when you're talking. Like, it starts with each one of you defining what's important to you in your life, and how you think, and what makes you tick, and what gives you intrinsic motivation. Because I think, like, remember that old book, Drive? The intrinsic motivation plus autonomy plus accountability equals amazing results. And everybody's got their own recipe for that. But, you know, obviously a lot of the folks listening today work for big companies, and they're playing by those rules. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But I think what I love about what you said, Alex, is it starts with you. And if your purpose and your way doesn't fit within your environment, those things are at odds, and you have to address that, because it's never going to change. And so I think the self-reflection of, like, what's going to work best for your creativity, your motivation, your time really matters. And I selfishly and personally am in a place where I'm at harmony with that. Well, some days better than others, but my intrinsic motivation sometimes means I like to work more than I probably should, but I like what I do. And so there's a construct there. So how do you recommend people go about thinking through what's best for them in terms of how, when, and what they're doing? And I want to then talk a little bit more about unpacking the differences we all have, because that's the fun of all this. But staying with the individual, how do you go about defining your work style?
So in the book, we talk about this framework: set, project, and respect. So the first thing is to set your work style. Now, as you say, not everyone can just set whatever work style they want. Not everyone is completely empowered to do that. But we encourage people to start by suspending disbelief about that and thinking, in an ideal world where you have 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, when would you like to work? And we recommend people start by putting in the non-negotiables for them. That might be sleep. It might be having 3 small kids. It might be going to the gym or caring for a relative, whatever it might be. You start with those non-negotiables, and then you overlay, actually, what gives me the most energy? When am I most motivated? And so you build out this kind of work style for yourself. Once you've set it, you then project it. You tell other people about it. And essentially that creates a verbal contract, which means you're much more likely to uphold it. And you also get support from other people in doing so. And for some people, if you work in a corporate organization, it may not be a case of simply projecting it and saying, here, this is henceforth how I'm going to work. It might be a more complicated conversation than that. And then the third step is respect it. And what's been really fascinating on our work style journeys has been that actually people are amazing at respecting other people's work styles, but they're not that great at respecting their own work styles. So through the Work Style Revolution, we try and create a framework for people to help hold each other to account, be part of a community. Alex and I, as a pair, we often recommend people come together as a pair to try and support each other, because I'm not great at respecting my work style. And it's partly what you were saying. It's because I love what I do. I want to do lots of it. So it's sometimes good to have someone who can say to you, hang on a minute, you don't want to, work on a Wednesday or whatever it is, and get you into good habits. Because when you're in those habits, it's much easier to stick to them. It's just unlearning a lot of kind of corporate social norms about you work Monday to Friday and therefore you can't not work on a Wednesday, for example. So set, project, and respect is the framework that we recommend using.
I love the respect thing. I think I'm shit at it too. If I'm honest, like, setting is good because you can be very intentional. We've done this. So we've brought in we use intranet called Notion, and many of us are defining our work styles. And like, when I meet somebody new, I tell them a couple things. I have ADD. And so when we're having a creative conversation, you're likely going to hear me shooting hoop or walking in the woods because that's how I think. Or I don't work between these times, these days, and here's why. And so projecting that allows people to understand. And, speaking personally as quote unquote, the boss, it comes with a different set of responsibilities, because what I say, people hold weight to in a way probably they shouldn't. When I'm creative, I'm like talking a lot, and this doesn't mean that you need to take it as directive and all these other things. But I think what you say is really important, because I break my own rules a lot, right? And so I love that you two have, and so for those of you not watching on YouTube, these two have amazing social cues with each other, because they clearly are such a good team of like, who's answering a question. It's like actually amazing. But I need to find the right respect partner in my life, because it will help hold accountable. My wife does that really well, which I think is fantastic. But an actual business teammate to do that is really important.
I would build on that with saying that the people you live with are really important to your ability to respect your work style. And in fact, to how you set your work style it can be very much driven by your home arrangement, and whether you can work from home, for example, or whether your partner works nights or weekends. All those things can affect what your ideal work style is. For a lot of people, working at the weekend is a great thing. So as Lizzie said, it can be helpful to start with a blank sheet of paper and treat all hours as equal. But I think the other thing that we have to do is learn to place more value on our non-working activities. So we're quite good at saying, work is is really important. I've got to do this thing by the end of this day because that's my deadline. We're not so good at prioritizing stuff for ourselves or stuff that's not work, you know, like going to the gym or eating a healthy lunch or meeting up with family or picking up the kids from school. What we have to do is get good at prioritizing those things or putting more value on them in our minds so that they become a more important part of our work style and our lifestyle across the decisions that we make day to day.
And I would add that I think by sharing those as part of your work style, and it was really interesting what you said just now, Ryan, even just giving us a little bit of insight into your work style, you also gave us a lot of insight into you as a human being. And so work style isn't just about when and where you work. It's about getting to know each other on a whole new level, because you understand why someone is the way they are, how they live their life, their other priorities they have going on. It necessitates a conversation that you wouldn't necessarily have in another organization if you weren't talking about work style. People are expected to leave all that stuff at the door, whereas I think culturally what work style does is it brings to the fore who you are as a human and what else you've got going on in your life, so that everyone can understand why you want to work the way you want to work, not just how you want to work.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I want to kind of unpack both of the things you two just said, because they're really important. I think we mustn't let our job define who we are as people. And I don't know about you two, but there's definitely been years, months, quarters where I'm fundamentally on the wrong side of that shit. And I'm like, dude, you're like a dad. You have so many other things that are important in your life, but like, I run Zappy. Like, who cares? Like, in the grand scheme of things, and that doesn't mean that your work isn't immensely important. Because for me, like, I get a lot of fulfillment from my work. And I would challenge everybody listening, if you don't get fulfillment from your work, really lean into the work style, because to what Alex said like 15 minutes ago, not all of us, particularly those of you listening, most likely aren't working in a factory on an assembly line. Yet so much of the way we work culturally is still running that playbook. And it's like, what are we doing? We're not living in the 1950s anymore. Yet so much of the business books and rhetoric are predicated upon that. And so I think getting really clear on what's important to you matters. And like, it's funny, this is like a really recent example. My wife's like, oh, we should go do pickleball. Do you guys have pickleball in the UK?
Yeah, we do.
I really want to learn
on the rise.
It's same here. It's like insane. And, you know, Jill's my wife, and she's like, oh, we should play pickleball at 1:00 on Fridays. And I had like the quintessential American guilt, like, you know, it's the middle of the workday. And then eventually I'm like, well, fuck it. Like, what does that hour and a half really mean? Because like, Alex, to your point, so Saturday mornings, my kids like to veg. My wife likes to go to the gym, and I have the most productive hour of work I'm going to have the entire week with my cup of coffee on Saturdays.
And that's a new skill. I think that's something that Alex and I have become keenly aware of, is that actually this whole way of working requires basically a new skill set. Like, to your point earlier about leadership, you know, traditionally leadership was defined as being in the place of work so everyone could see you. Okay, so what are the new domains of leadership? You know, it's something different. And similarly, we've talked about having to set your own boundaries. And when you love what you do, sometimes that's difficult. In the book, we talk about the dark side of autonomy, that, you know, we fiercely advocate for autonomy. There's loads of good stuff about it. But one of the things is about taking responsibility yourself for knowing that you're not going to work on a Friday afternoon, but you are going to do a couple of hours on a Saturday, and having that accountability. So I think it's partly about culture, but it's also partly about us each kind of adopting the skill set we need to effectively work this way.
Yeah, it's true. Because autonomy isn't designed, at least from my perspective, to not be productive. It's basically saying you're an adult and we trust you, do your thing. And those are very different things. So for me, like, the prerequisite is like, you're skilled, you're intrinsically motivated, you're clear, you're intentional, and you do your own shit. And then I don't really give a shit if you do it on a Saturday, a Sunday, you work 4 days, 5 days. So I want to come back to the leadership point of this, because, you know, I think this has gotten a lot harder in the recent paradigm that we find ourselves in. And maybe a lot harder, but maybe equal parts, it just wasn't something we discussed. It's actually understanding each other. So let me give you an example. Our head of sales, Glenn, and I work together. We talk every day. We couldn't be more different in terms of how we think, how we like to work. And so we have to be very intentional about like, is Glenn, so I'm somebody who really values asynchronous communication. I like time to think. I don't really like being presented to, and I don't like showing up to a meeting, not like having thought through something. Glenn is somebody who likes to talk through his ideas and do the work in the scheduled time that he has it. And so you can imagine on paper, our work styles are diametrically opposed. But it's only by us two being very comfortable acknowledging those things are we able to find contracts with each other. And it's not to say some days he's not like, fuck's sake, with another Notion document. Or I'm like, dude, do I get to really sit on a call with you? But that respect of each other is actually really important because we're all actually different. And this is an opportunity for us to acknowledge the difference, to find ways to work. But I think, Lizzie, to what you say, it's not just about work. It's about, well, why do I like to do that? And why does he like to do that? And what about him makes that true so that we together can have a better work product? And that's a really important thing. And it's like, any of these business books of like 5 dysfunctions of a team or whatever, they start with trust. And how do you trust somebody you don't know intimately and understand intimately?
Big question.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you two are doing what leaders need to do, which is role modeling the behavior across the business that you want to see. And by bringing your work styles out into the open, you are able to understand one another to such a level that your ways of working can meet in the middle, and you don't finish an interaction cursing the other person and feeling stressed about it for the rest of the day, which is probably what would have happened if you weren't openly sharing your work styles and building an appreciation for one another and your differences. So kudos to you guys, doing a good job on that front. I think something that really helps with that is a topic that we talk about in the book, which is collective intelligence, which is the idea that if we all agree and we organize ourselves into organizations of people who look, think, talk, and act the same, we get lots of agreement and we get groupthink, essentially. If we organize ourselves into more diverse groups, then we get differences of opinion. But it is in those differences of opinion that we can increase our collective intelligence.
Yes.
So by not agreeing, but by learning to communicate in a way that makes us smarter as a team, that's when we start to unlock our collective intelligence. And that's something that organizations have really lacked or have been missing through the one-size system of work, which essentially limits the talent pool to those people who live within a commutable distance of the office. And invariably, word of mouth kind of leads to recruitment, and you get lots of kind of groupthink happening. Whereas through individualizing work, you can tap into a global workforce that is geographically dispersed, highly diverse, but therefore you need to create the conditions for those diverse minds to collaborate. Yeah. But if you can, and Workstyle is a really important part of being able to do that, because it opens up these conversations that enable you to work together despite your big differences, then you can start to be collectively more intelligent, and that's competitive advantage from a business point of view.
Massively, right? Like the convergence of disciplines is where innovation comes from. I don't want to be around a bunch of yes men and women. I mean, because then what are you going to do? Like my shitty idea is going to be what we do always. And I think like a lot of the corporate structures are designed to propel that. I can't tell you how many of our customers, our customers are amazing, big, iconic brands that are trying to transform how they work culturally, digitally, et cetera. And they're mired in dysfunction as a result of that. Like how much of today's corporate America is going to be predicated about the meeting, about the PowerPoint deck to placate the executive. And then the only way you thrive in that environment, particularly when we're probably doing more and more of it on Zoom or Teams or whatever, is to be a loudmouth. And like how many people, like I've learned to love this about our culture. We got 20 different countries on the staff, and this is the first time I've ever had to lead engineering teams, and they think differently. And so by leveling the thought playing field, you can really get everybody's ideas. So things like, we do a lot of silent meetings. We'll read, do post-it notes, dot vote. But again, not knowing Glenn's work style, that doesn't exactly work for him either, right? Because he's somebody who's like, dude, I need to think through that and talk it out. And so it's a really important leadership burden, right? So to really understand everybody on your team and how they need to be coached and led, and then how the team together communicates. I mean, like doing stuff like getting the whole team together and actually sharing their work styles would be a good use of time, because then they understand, like, so-and-so goes skiing in the morning, then they're ready for live time from 11 to 2, then they need to think from 2 to 4 or whatever. Well, if you know that, you can sort of catch them in stride. Okay, so I want to talk to you guys about two tensions, because I'm obviously drinking the Kool-Aid. Tension number one is, which one do I want to start with? Let's stick with people, because we're already talking about people. We are all wonderfully different. The Glenn and Ryan example I intentionally share because Glenn wouldn't care, and it's a good juxtaposition of two geographically aligned. He lives in New York, I live in Boston, very different people. People today are being asked to do more faster, more digitally, more efficiently than they've ever done in work. Being asked to change and fly the plane at the same time. I mean, there's no business that's not transforming, innovating, and trying to make money in this quarter that's out there. We Zappy and many other businesses leaned into geographic dispersion during COVID. I mean, I have basically no office culture to speak of. And I used to have a company that we built that was really centered around humans coming to the office every day. And as a byproduct of that, we had a company that was built on human connection. And we have 4 total hours of synchronous time a day between Asia, United States, South Africa, Europe. And that's really hard. We have people at varying stages in their career who might need apprenticeship, who might need help. And so that sort of digital hybrid dynamic is challenging. And so I'm not surprised when I see so many businesses saying you must come back to the office for 3 days a week. I get it, because it seems more controlled. So I'd love to just unpack the people side of this. Like, how can we help people grow, be more effective, be better leaders if they only have 4 hours a day and they all like to work different?
I mean, I think it's really interesting. The concept of connection is something Alex and I are asked about all the time. People read Workstyle or hear about Workstyle, and they think what we advocate for is entirely remote all the time. And I think, firstly, we don't advocate that. We like being around people. You know, we have Hoxby home meetups happening around the world on any given week. We host one big meetup once a year. But when we come together, as Brian Elliott says in his book about the future of work, to break bread. We come together to build those relationships and to build a connection with one another, that then we can go away and we can still feel connected. And then when we're digital, we go out of our way to build a sense of connection. And that just doesn't happen by itself. Like, that's about role modeling from leaders, but it's also about investing and taking time as a leader to spend your time doing the things that purely build connection, not just the things that drive revenue or make sure that you've got a healthy bottom line. So, for instance, at Hoxby, we've got a water cooler channel. Alex and I hang out in the water cooler channel quite a lot. We have some bad chat, gifs and babies and cats and dogs. You haven't posted one of the cats recently, Alex. That's long overdue.
I've literally just filmed them as it goes for a piece of content later today. Yeah,
he's working on that.
Yeah,
he's gonna pick up his kids first.
Yeah, that's true. As you know, he's going to pick up his kids in 50 minutes. But basically, you can connect profoundly when you're digital, but only if you go out of your way to create a culture where that is facilitated. For instance, I went through early menopause after my breast cancer treatment, and there's an interest menopause group at Hoxby. I have never met the 20 people in that group, but I have been absolutely blown away by how supportive they've been of me and each other, and how open they've been on their journey. And I think you can kind of decode that in a few ways. firstly, there's a bit of kind of anonymity about being digital, that you can post something on your terms. There's also, you can take the time to like word something carefully.
Yes.
Whereas if you're in real life, you might feel intimidated to share it. You can sleep on it, think, do I definitely want to share this? How do I want to tweak it? And so I think in some ways you can actually build deeper connection, but you can only do it when there's the right framework. And we often say, and we've got a stat in the book about it, that actually more than half of Brits suffer from loneliness in the workplace. And people, I think being in the same place is a proxy for connection. But it's not if you're all sitting next to each other with your headphones in on different Zoom calls.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. So I'm fully aligned to what you say. Like, I want to spend time and frankly T&E money. Sorry for the business acronym, travel and entertainment, on human connection. And there's only one thing I would add, which is breaking the back of hard problems. So like we're redoing something big in our data collection space, and I want our partner and our teams together in London for a week because they'll converge. But to your point, I don't need to sit next to you if I'm on Zoom all day, or I don't need to sit next to you if I'm writing, and I don't need to leave my kids. And so that paradigm really works for me. Sorry, Alex, you were going to jump in and say something.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that I think we as a workforce are learning new skills at this point in time. So when we started working this way, we weren't using Slack or any sort of messaging platform to begin with. So there's a newness to even what we're doing and how we're advocating that people work, which I think means that we're all kind of in this together, which is about learning about what it takes to make these new tools really work for us. And we've got lots of learnings from how we've done it at Hoxby. But central to that is people thinking about that tangibly, about okay, I used to work in a certain way when I had to go into an office and before we had all these amazing tools. Now I really need to work a different way because all these tools are here that change the way I can work. They change what I can do. And very often what happens is organizations will adopt a technology like Slack, for example, and people will use it. Probably, I mean, I'm going to make it a massive sweeping statement now, but because perhaps they're told to. But what happens is, broadly speaking, communication falls into a reactive rut, whereby you basically respond to messages a lot of the time. But to Lizzie's point, you don't necessarily think about what you should or could do proactively to build connection with the people you're working with. And that's why we hang out a lot in the water cooler, because it's a place where we can proactively set the culture of an organization that has no offices. We can bring people together behind conversations about anything. And those people can be anywhere and accessing that conversation at any time. And that is magical. It's so much better than the 3 or 4 people who happen to be passing the water dispenser at the time when they all need a drink. You know, right. that is limited, right? Versus the exponential potential we have to collaborate in this digital first world. So we just need to realize that there's this opportunity in front of us, but we need to change our relationship with technology and with work to make the most of it.
It's funny, you think, oh, Zappy sells software. That's what I talk about a lot. But most of the time we're talking about change, right? And I think oftentimes it's about the intentions. So that's why I love the set, project, and respect framework, because you could do this with many things. But as you two are talking, like, I have some like very close friends at work not because of we even talk together at work, because we're in special interest Slack groups and we talk shit about the Boston Celtics because I love the NBA. And so I'm like, those are like people that I know. And so like, I have like a different relationship with them. And I think, you know, encouraging people to lean into that is really important. But I think the other thing is like being intentional about when you use different vehicles. So our chief people officer, Tom, who I think you folks have met, like he's trying to get much clearer of like, what do we use live time for? Because you spend a lot of time in meetings, and if meetings aren't effective, then everything else sort of goes off. But like think of all the wonderful asynchronous technology we've got now, like voice memos, Loom videos, Vidyard videos, things you can do to like capture an idea. And I happen to be, and this is in my personal work style, I suck at writing. And so I engage with the staff in a lot of ways, but it's usually like a voice memo, like, hey, have we thought about this? What are we talking? And I think for me, given I'm like not a great written communicator, it's like very helpful, like to get the tone and sort of everything else. But all of this stuff requires intention. So I have only 7 minutes left with you two. And by the way, can we have a beer in London? Because I'm all fired up.
Yes.
2 hours.
We'll take you to the pub where we came up with the idea.
Yeah,
That'd be
exactly.
great.
We'll solve all the world's problems in that pub. I'm very excited.
It's actually not a very nice pub, Ryan. So maybe we'll go.
Oh, that's even better. Zappy's global headquarters is in Camden, and our local is called the Camden Head, which is a wonderful shithole.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Those
it's a
are the
wonderful
best kind of pubs.
Yeah, it's a bet. I mean, I love a pub. I mean, yeah, again, my mother's from inner city Dublin, so like I love a leaky pub with a pint. All right, so I got time for one more question, and it's a big one. So it's an exercise in how fast we can all talk. Everybody listening here is probably like, yeah, I want to have more control. I want to be more intentional. I want to connect with my colleagues. I want more time to have deep work and also fulfill myself. But I work for a big company that's mandating me coming back into the office 3 days a week with a boss who might not be willing to be vulnerable and a CMO who erodes our strategy no matter what. Can you give some folks some advice on what they can do to influence a situation that they might not be in control of?
I think that what we would say is start a conversation that actually, we wrote the book for individuals. We had a decision point when we started writing the book. Do we write this for organizations as like a kind of HR manual, or do we write it for individuals? And we chose to write it for individuals because ultimately it's individuals who create change, and that can come from anywhere. And so for us, the book is there to kind of provide that armory and the community as well, the Workstyle Revolution community as well, so that people can be equipped with the tools to have those conversations. Now, depending on the organization, it may be, I want my own full work style, or it may be more of a business case for why this is the right way to do it. And I think the book essentially lays out the business case so that there's a clear benefit to the organization as well as to the individual. Alex, is that what you were going to say, or were you going to say something completely different?
No, yeah, I was going to say, read the book first and foremost. There's lots of thought-provoking stuff in there, questions for you as a starter for 10 to just reevaluate life now that we're in the digital age, now that we've had a pandemic, which has taken a lot of the blinkers off people's perceptions of work. But I think, to your point, Lizzie, about having the community. So we've started a community around this subject called the Workstyle Revolution. You can join it via workstylerevolution.com. It's free to join. It's people who believe that the future of work is a work style future of work. They believe in autonomy and enabling autonomy as far as possible. But principally, they're there to support one another. So with questions like that. So if you find yourself in that situation, then you can say, hey, here's my situation. I'm getting a lot of resistance from the conversation so far. Here's what I've done. And the work stylers will rally around that conversation and share what they've done, what they've learned, what might help, useful resources, and anything that you might need to have the next conversation or prepare the business in a different way. So all the time those conversations are happening within the Workstyle Revolution community. Lizzie and I are taking all of the good stuff and turning it into more tools and resources and things that we can share publicly. So that's happening, and we think that that's the start of a revolution. That's why we've called it a revolution, because fundamentally it's on people to believe they have agency over this, believe they can bring about systemic change. And so we're here to equip people with the tools to make that happen, because it's in our collective best interests to do so.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So I know we're out of time. I wish we weren't, and I wish we did have a pint of Guinness in front of us. Just a couple of thoughts. My piece of advice on this, having really leaned into work styles and sort of been on my own journey, all of you work for big companies, but you work in a small team in a big company. Set your own personal intentions, then have a team conversation. because it's pragmatic. It's something you can do. Isolate your stakeholders and see what you can do. Get engaged in workstylerevolution.com. And I think I just want to end with what Alex said. People are what is going to change the world. Technology is what will enable us. And so it's what we make of it. And so Alex and Lizzie, what a wonderful way to start the day. So much respect for the work that you're doing. And I know you're super busy. So thank you very much for taking the time to join me and to share your wisdom with our listeners today.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been such a pleasure, Ryan, and we look forward to that pint in the pub when you're next over.
I'll definitely hit you two up.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening. So I wish we had more time, but we actually ran out of time because that always happens. The challenge is you always shoot the shit with your wonderful guests because you don't get to see them. And then you're like, oh my God, we got to hit record. And that happened today. But Patricia, I wanted to get your views on this topic. Obviously, as somebody who's worked inside a large corporation, Zappy, your own independent consultancy, and now back in a large corporation as the boss, and like how you view that. And I think one of the things I'd love to debrief with you on a little bit is how can people listening that work for the Cokes of the world or the Pepsis of the world or the P&Gs of the world, the big companies, make sense of this wonderful lesson that we just heard, but bring it to their own ecosystems, which might be more structured, more traditional, more hierarchical, etc.
This was a challenge. This episode was a challenge for me because, and I'm going to start from the end. Right now, I'm in a space where I am absolutely loving what I'm doing. So I've found that with maybe 5% exception, I've loved every single job I'm in. So I've been privileged in that, right? But there's stuff here that it made me think, how can I do better? But there are a few phrases that I want to highlight so that we can set the stage for what we're about to talk to. Number one, work should not be one size fits all. It should be individualized. Absolutely correct. There is no one size fits all because, as we all know, humans learn differently, they work differently, they interact differently. And some people are 100% virtual, 100% local. Some people are early bird, some people are late. So we should not ever think that work is one. And as a boss, I have to understand that so much better than I ever did in my life. Not only do I have to understand it, but others. So keep that in mind. Number two, people are amazing at respecting other people's work styles, but they're not that great at respecting their own work styles. I'm quoting you guys, right, from the interview. Something about that makes me just happy. The fact that we are able to respect others more than ourselves makes me happy because it makes me think, okay, we're still human, right? But now let's turn it back and let's respect everybody. Let's respect ourselves as well. So we're starting from a great place. Now, this episode started, it said, this is to give you insight on how you can better understand each other, how you can better work with your environment so you can be more effective. And I thought, no, that's not what this episode was all about. So I reframed it. I mean, I'm unquoting you. So what this episode was all about is how you can be more effective, happy, and fulfilled in what you do by working better with your environment via understanding yourself and others. That's what this was about. That is the golden nugget in the conversation that you had in the book, in the concept work styles, and in the understanding. There are very few problems in life that I think could not benefit from this thinking. Think about it. Understand yourself. Check. Understand others. Check. Work better together. Check. We could avoid so many friggin' wars just with that, right? So I mean, those are two common words. They're in English. Everybody understands it. But what they're talking about, work style together, it's all about how you define your own. It's an autonomy to define. But with autonomy comes so much responsibility. Make sure that you understand the pros and the cons of autonomy. You have to know that you're ready for it, right? You can define your own work style. You can be autonomous, but you've got to be ready to be accountable and responsible. So this is not all, roses and caramels. This is all about, okay, fine. Big responsibility comes with this, which is, in my opinion, makes it all the sweeter. But that's just the way that's how I am. I'm hyper and I want to.
You can't have both. You can't have both the freedom without the accountability. Like, I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I had a bunch of stuff to do, but it was 80 and sunny. And so I went on a boat with some colleagues and had a few drinks. It was great. But it means I had to do my shit still when I woke up this morning. It doesn't, the accountability. I think a lot of times people want the harmony without the accountability, whether that's, your family, your colleagues, etc.
And that responsibility goes back to respecting others and respecting yourself. I can't turn this all around and all of a sudden me. No, that doesn't work that way either. My freedom ends when it starts infringing on your freedom.
Yeah.
And that's really important. So I wanted to focus the outro on this conversation on how to make this come to life in a safe way. And I don't want to use the word safe in a, oh, I'm so boring, right? I don't want to take risks. No, I want this to work because I've made it work for me and I am a gazillion times happier. And one of the things that Zappy taught me was this road. I started this journey at Zappy. And you know me well because you helped me, crack my shell and come out and be more me and understand where I like to work best. So that's where I started this journey. And so if it wasn't for Zapping, if it wasn't for being independent, I wouldn't be able to take on the responsibility that I have nowadays and still be me and still be happy. So I want people to understand that this is possible, even in a large corporation, but you have to be respectful of yourself and of others, because only when you're totally independent can you just kind of be you, right? So what happens? Number one, start with you, right? What are your non-negotiables? What's important in your life? What motivates you intrinsically and extrinsically? What makes you motivated? Is there a time of day or a time of life that you are? What gives you energy? Is it sun? Is it water? Some people only think when they are in the shower. You were, for example, Brian, I know it's in the outdoors, right? For me, I've got to be in motion. Right? For me, my office, I had the walls painted so that I could write on them. That's what gives me motivation, writing on the walls and thinking big, because I don't think well and little. But these are things that I learned. When and where and how do I learn? I am an absolute morning person. At 4:00, I start my battery, start running down. I need caffeine, right? So once you understand that, set your intentions, make sure you know what they are and put them right there in front of you, not aside, in front of you. 2, who's your others? Now, the next part is others. Who is your others? Is your boss? Is your others your partner? Is your others your team? Is your others your company? Who are your others, right? Then have this team conversation. Be honest about you, but let them be honest about them. All those questions you asked yourself, have them ask themselves those questions too. Now, this is scary as all because you're thinking in your mind, oh my God, this is exponentially complicated. This is going to be crazy. Everybody's going to have a different. No. Don't forget the bell-shaped curve. I'm in math. I'm a researcher. The bell-shaped curve is true for everything. There's going to be much more that you have in common than you have difference. And it's all going to wash out, but let them all decide and ask them the questions after you figure out who your tribe is, who your people are, right? When you have that, group up. Who's who, what's what, who's more similar between them, and then organize them. Now, this is me interpreting the Workstyles book and the team, because this is how I would do it if I were, how I'm trying to do it here, right? Mm-hmm. But then once you have that all together, find a way that it'll work. Together, find a way that it'll work.
And that might mean some give and take. Like you heard me use some examples on the conversation of like, my work style and one of my colleagues is completely different. And so we have to decide when we're going to meet each other in those strides.
That was a great example. That was a great example.
Yeah, I hope he doesn't mind me calling him out, but like it's a real thing. And like, how do you actually, because that's one of the challenges inside of a bigger organization is you're part of a team that might be a service to another team, that might be adjacent to another team. And what you're saying, it's the stuff that it's similar to our discussion about managing transformation. It's the basic shit people don't take the time to do that allows you to move faster and understand each other better.
Exactly.
It's really important.
Because it needs to be win. What does that mean? It has to win for you. You have to be, so maybe you don't get 100% of what you need. Maybe you get 80% of what you need. 80% is pretty damn good if you ask me, right? If your it has to win for others. If the others get 80%, that's pretty good too. So now you're not getting 80 and 80, you're getting 160 is what you're getting, right? Which is even better. It has to work for your company because at the end of the day, even nonprofits have to make money. It's just, we're here in business. Things have to work, objectives have to be met. I'm in a situation, for example, where I've got people in Colombia and I've got people in South Africa and I've got people in different countries. I've got to find the same as you, those small hours where everybody's awake. And so if I have cross-functional, I can't say I'm global and then not respect that little tiny space. So that space in the calendar has to be clean for everybody, right? And once you've got all that you're winning, the team is winning, and the company is winning its objectives, set it, project it, and respect it. That was beautiful. The framework that they have, I loved that. Set it, project it, and respect it. I think that that's the best tagline I've ever heard. I love it. But how are you going to do that? That's the hard part. I mean, of course, read the book, yes. But more than just the book, it's the support team. Why?
Yes.
That's a different tribe. It's a different tribe. You're going to have a new tribe that's going to help you, and leverage tech. For God's sake, leverage tech. Tech is, there are so many tools. Leverage it. Learn to place value on all those things. But talk to people who are on this journey. This is a new journey. I hope that it spreads like wildfire. Right. So I'm grateful as hell, because my generation and the one before me were all like, suck it up, buttercup. This is work. This is what we get paid for. Do that shit. Everybody has to lift bricks. You be quiet. You're getting a paycheck. Right. And so I've eaten a lot of mud pie. Right. And I am so grateful that these young people are now thinking, wait a minute. I count too. That is so good. As long as the company and your team doesn't suffer, I get to count too. And I love that.
You know what? I've got to tell you something. I agree with you, but I have a slight niggle, so I'll just share it. So, and I wanted to do this on the podcast, so I'm going to read everybody my work style, because it's actually written on Notion for the entire staff of Zappy's 300 plus employees to read whenever they want. I will read it here. So if you ever want to work with me, you know how I like to work. But I think the intention setting, the projecting of intentions and respecting them is so important. The understanding of people, so you can catch each other and drive, is so important. The fact that we are, and people listening to this podcast, myself included, are knowledge workers, so we mustn't follow 9-to-5 playbooks. I'm with you. My niggle is there's too much entitlement of the world, that all those things are a replacement for hard work. And that there's a lot of assholes and pundits and thought leaders on LinkedIn talking about get rich quick schemes, and it's all bullshit. You still got to put in the fucking work. And so as long as, that's why I like, what I really loved about what Lizzie and Alex were saying is the quid pro quo of accountability within that, because you still have to work, dude. Like, this is not like whatever you're doing. You could be a solopreneur. You could be at a big company that makes candy. You could be at a software business. There's no such thing as an overnight success. So,
no, you got to work your butt off.
But just do it in a better way. Make yourself happy when you do it.
And make sure that your freedom doesn't encroach on somebody else's freedom.
Yes. All right. You want to read it? Want to hear my my work styles?
Yes.
Okay. So we use an intranet at Zappy called Notion. And this is something that many of us have experimented with, but it's certainly not like ubiquitous yet. But it basically starts with, like, you know, how do you like to work? Where are you in the world? Are there days and times you find better or worse for having meetings? Are there times of the day that you'll definitely be offline? Are there things that would be helpful for people to understand about you? And so that's section one, how I like to work. So mine is, I am based in Boston. I have 3 little kids that I like to eat breakfast and dinner with. So I work my day around that. I often respond to Slack and emails between 6 to 7 a.m. And then I usually have calls from 8:30 to noon, leaving my afternoons free for more topical conversation or deep work. I will usually respond to you within a day, and I will try to always make time for you within 2 days if you would like advice on something. That's part one. Part two, vulnerable. The truth is, I have ADHD, and I also like to get outside. So if you see me pacing off video, or even if you hear a basketball bouncing or birds chirping, don't worry, I'm probably more focused than ever. That's just how I get my energy. Equally, if you see me with a scoured face, I'm likely just thinking. I'm not shy, so if I don't like what you're saying, I'm just going to tell you, because I pride myself on being direct, for better or worse. So if you read that, you can know a lot about somebody, and you would not think everybody's going to be comfortable saying that. The stigmas of mental health and all the other stuff. So then the next section is my communication strengths and preferences. So the advice here is use a bullet point style list to be very specific about what you have clear preferences and or strengths when it comes to communicating. This is about receiving and responding to information, sharing your point of view, engaging with others across the business. Keep in mind, everybody has their own style and preference. And if we can understand and embrace those, we're likely to work together much more effectively. Okay, so I do really well with written documentation or a quick voice memo or video to explain a concept. It then helps me think and give you clear feedback. I don't mind and oftentimes value talking ideas out with people, both my own ideas and others. I also just value time to think. I love dealing with tension head on. If I pissed you off, if you're upset with me, unsettled, let's talk. You can share a frustration on Slack or email, but I prefer to talk it through so that we don't linger a tension, because that gives me anxiety. Escalations. Don't escalate to me before you've truly tried to connect with somebody, work and align with their cross-functional team. If you need help approaching that conversation, I'm very happy to do that. I do not like live presentations. I find them to be extremely wasteful of our limited synchronous time. I think all meetings should have a clear agenda, a pre-read, and a framing of its discussion, of whether it's talking through an idea, taking advice, or making a decision. I really, really value open space on my calendar so I can focus and think. With that said, if you need me, I'm here. I enjoy spending time with you on a personal level to get to know you. That's why I'm in the office. When I'm in the office, I'm not trying to sit on Zoom. And then the last is important for all of you bosses out there, especially like me, who are assertive and loud naturally. Okay, given my role, I am trying to be careful of how I engage. I am vocal when I'm thinking through an idea, and sometimes people mistake my energy or my idea as a directive. So you might oftentimes hear me caveat with something like I'm thinking out loud. Please tell me that I'm wrong and challenge me so we can make the best decision. If there's a decision I've already made, I will tell you that so that you can not waste your time. So imagine if everybody on your team had something like this written out. You had that level of understanding with, and that level of, it'd be so much fucking easier to work together every day. So you should read this book. You should set your intentions. You should project them to your teammates, and then you should respect that shit, and you'll be happier as long as you do the work.
Do the work.
Do the work. This was fun. I'm all wound up now. The good news for all of you listeners is I'm all wound up, and I'm about to go in 15 minutes to record our next episode, which is with my friend Simon Berg. Simon Berg is the CEO of Ceros. You thought we swore a lot when we had Mark Ritson on the podcast. Oh boy, I think Simon and I are in for trouble this afternoon. Simon is an entrepreneur. He is the CEO and founder of Ceros, which is a business that serves marketers. We are going to be talking about creativity and artificial intelligence and how those two worlds converge. And it is my second most least structured. I don't know how to say it. It's not a structured conversation because I just want to talk to him about AI and creativity for an hour. And I think he'll be in for a treat. We've got several episodes remaining on this 7th season of Inside Insights. We're having a lot of fun. I hope you are having fun. A lot of you have been sending love for some of the conversations. The conversation about the transformation playbook. I really appreciate that. It helps Patricia and I sharpen our editorial focus and make sure we're delivering value. And as ever, if you want to be on the podcast, if you know somebody who you think should be on the podcast, tell us why, and we'd love to interview them.
If there's a topic that you want to us to talk about, to go deeper into, let us know.
Tell us.
That we can help. This is all about being useful.
I actually had Oksana, shout out because I know you're listening, recommend a guest to us just yesterday. We'll be emailing back. But everybody, thanks for listening. Ladies, it's good to see you. And Patricia, Kelsey and I are waiting for some Aldor merch in the mail, so don't forget about us.
I won't forget about you.
Bye, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye.